We're not doing a podcast, episode 5. This is our 5th podcast, so I guess we are doing this. Mark Weber here with Jarrett Least. The biggest story in New York. A bunch of dudes went on an airplane. Owner of the Jets, Woody Johnson, head coach Robert Saleh, general manager Joe Douglas, and offensive coordinator, the new guy, Nathaniel Hackett, flew from New Jersey to California to meet with Aaron Rodgers to try to get him to come to the New York Jets. Now, everyone's probably talking about how this is going to work, of Rodgers coming to the Jets via trade, free agency, cap space, whole lot of nonsense. The one thing that I'm wondering about when it comes to this, long plane ride with those guys. What in the world are they talking about from New Jersey to California, from California back to New Jersey?
Well, I feel like Woody Johnson was probably just trying to get so super excited and just be like to Robert Saleh and to Joe Douglas and to Nathaniel Hackett, like, oh my freaking God, like we're going to meet with Aaron Rodgers. We're going to get this guy. We're going to be on the back pages of every New York tabloid, and everything's going to be just so wonderful for our franchise. And I'm sure Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, and Nathaniel Hackett were looking at him smiling because ultimately he's the boss man. He signs their checks. So they're probably smiling at him and saying, yeah, it's going to be great, Woody. We're really excited. This is going to be a fun meeting. We're going to have some coffee. We're going to have some dinner. It'll be a lot of fun. But then ultimately, I think the three between Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and Nathaniel Hackett were definitely having more serious conversations in terms of how is this guy going to be incorporated into our offense. I think the gist of that meeting really stems from Nathaniel Hackett because of the fact that he has a prior relationship with Aaron Rodgers, with him being the offensive coordinator in Green Bay, in which Aaron Rodgers was MVP in back-to-back seasons just 2 years ago, which sometimes people almost forget about when you hear the buzz of, oh, Aaron Rodgers, he didn't have a great year last year. Is he washed? Whatever. But I have a very good feeling that meeting, cross-country flight, was all sorts of excitement. You got to believe it was all sorts of excitement on your part, right, Mark?
I think it's going to go a lot of different ways. I think Saleh was definitely really excited. Saleh was definitely the guy that's going to show up with a ton of caffeine, coffee, Red Bull, C4 Energy, just naming brands, hopefully not going to get sued. Just so hyped up. You have Saleh was definitely loaded up on coffee, loaded up on the caffeine. Hackett was definitely awkwardly texting Rodgers, being like, hey, man, I'm coming to see you. We're going to do those fun things we did in California last time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Joe Douglas is probably sitting there trying to figure out logistically how it would work, like you mentioned, while Woody Johnson was probably going, hey, you guys hear about this Dominion voting scandal? Pretty crazy. That's how I think it was going. It was probably just a really interesting conversation. 6 hours is a lot of time to talk about football, and I highly doubt it was just about Aaron Rodgers, and I hope there's a 30 for 30 on that plane ride in the future.
Who knows? If they ultimately end up getting Aaron Rodgers, I will be the one who produces that 30 for 30. You can join me, Mark. It'll probably be I'll need some assistance on that in terms of producing that because
editing, shooting, writing.
When it comes to production,
turn the camera on.
I'll need your assistance when it comes to that. But if Aaron Rodgers does get traded to the Jets, I will start that 30 for 30 process. So let's hope the meeting went well, which you have to believe it did. I mean, if you ever...
There's so many ways it could have gone poorly. So many.
How would you think it went poorly?
I think Saleh probably scared him. I mean, Saleh was probably just banging on the table being like, let's go! Gang green! Let's go! Well, Rodgers was going, okay, like, I've done the research. I'm very into the holistic medicine thing. You got to lay off the caffeine, buddy. Maybe running upstairs is going to help you get that energy down. Why don't you do that? There's a staircase right over there. Just run up and down and get that energy down. And then being like, okay, now that guy's out of the way, let's talk. While Hackett was just awkwardly talking about some memories. That's probably how I think it went.
Well, it probably was better than the meeting that they had with Derek Carr when they took him to an Italian restaurant on a Saturday afternoon when no one was even in the restaurant.
2 p.m., right?
That just goes to show you that Derek Carr clearly was choice number 2 when the whole Jets brass is literally flying cross country in one day to basically have coffee or whatever, have whatever it is, and then
fly taking an Uber pool to meet Derek Carr.
Exactly. Literally, well, we're going to rent out a restaurant for 45 minutes. Hey, Derek, welcome to New Jersey. You want some chicken parm? You want some penne alla vodka? Good. Get out of here. We don't want you anyway. So, look, Aaron Rodgers is choice number one for the Jets. We all know this. You hope the meeting went well. I think this was definitely the beginning stages of what ultimately I think will end up being a relationship, because I have this confident feeling that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a New York Jet in the next couple of days. Look, we're on the Aaron Rodgers time frame. He's going to decide what he wants to do. And then when he decides, he'll go to the Packers and say, let's get the trade in motion and put me in a Jets uniform.
Where do you think they went? What type of place do you think they went to in California?
Well, I think Aaron was first at a coffee shop before he met up with the Jets brass. So maybe
you think Aaron's an anti-oat milk guy or pro-oat milk?
Honestly, one thing that I will not try to do is get in the head of Aaron Rodgers, because I don't want to be in the category of Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter, where Aaron Rodgers says, I don't know shit about you. So I'm not going to judge anything about Aaron Rodgers, what he likes to do, what he doesn't like to do, because I don't want to be in that category. So who knows? Maybe they went to a good steakhouse somewhere in Malibu. Ultimately, that stuff is immaterial to me. If it was a good meeting, great. Let's get the ball rolling, get Aaron Rodgers the next step to get him in a Jets uniform.
We don't know where Aaron Rodgers will be in the near future, but we do know where Jim Boeheim won't be. He won't be the head basketball coach of the Syracuse program. Kind of feels weird to say, because it is. He almost was the coach for 50 seasons, 47 years at the helm for the Syracuse Orange. Everyone on earth is going to be talking about Jim Boeheim's legacy. We know what it was. It was fantastic. He made Syracuse Syracuse. But what will the program look like moving forward?
I really think the program has a chance for a bit of a reset with the hire of Adrian Autry. The Syracuse basketball program really was just on a downward spiral these past few years. It was way past.
Despite the Sweet 16 appearance in 2021?
It just seemed like that was a fluke. Like, there's something about the way the basketball program was trending over the past few years that just wasn't ascending. They would sneak into the tournament and maybe they would get on a little bit of a run because the 2-3 zone could stifle some teams in the tournament on quick turnarounds. The program was not trending upwards. I just really feel that Jim Boeheim was just a guy who needed to retire 4, 5, maybe 6 years ago. This allows the program for a reset. Adrian Autry's fresh blood. I think he can be a bright, young coach for some players. And I think also players wanted to transfer seemingly every year the past few years after having to play for Jim Boeheim. There was clearly issues with the style of coaching that Jim Boeheim employed to these young kids. So I think this is the opportunity for a fresh start. And I'm looking forward to see what the future holds for Syracuse basketball.
Syracuse is looking for a fresh start, but there's a few programs that had a fresh start and it didn't really work out for them. For example, Maryland basketball post Gary Williams, been a disappointment. Indiana post Bobby Knight hasn't been that type of program. St. John's under Lou Carnesecca hasn't been anything special. UCLA after John Wooden. UCLA was Duke and Kentucky before they were Duke and Kentucky. And since John Wooden left, they've won the national championship just once. How could anyone believe that they could rebound, considering that there are programs that have really fell off a cliff, to say the least, since their main guy left?
Well, I think the fact that there is still history to Syracuse basketball, it still has that prestigious name to it. So I think that could be somewhat of a selling point. But the way recruitment goes now, it's all about these NIL deals. Can Syracuse sell some of these young players on their program coming to play in the Dome? Obviously, when it comes to likeness and brand, that's not my area of expertise. So you hope some Syracuse alumni can sell some young players on the program moving forward. And you're in the ACC. You get the opportunity to play against the likes of Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, led by Tony Bennett, who at this point you would have to say is the best in the ACC at this point. I mean, Duke is okay. They're solid. They're good. North Carolina, they were in the national championship game last year, but it's been a little bit of a struggle for them this year. So Syracuse has the opportunity right now with this new start, with a younger coach, to make its mark in the ACC. You're in a powerful conference. I think you can sell young players on Syracuse basketball still. It's a good thing, in my opinion, Jim Boeheim is gone, because it just became way too stale. And you've got some fresh blood in the program now. And I think you can still sell the Syracuse brand to players who are going to ultimately play in college basketball.
Yeah, and I think Syracuse, we've seen a lot of teams where Indiana, Maryland, St. John's. I mean, St. John's has been pretty bad, but UCLA is a top 5 team right now. And it's very tough to win a national championship. I think Syracuse could eventually return to form, but it's going to be difficult. And do you kind of think that Adrian Autry is that guy moving forward, or do they need to kind of keep him in that realm right now until they look elsewhere?
It's an unknown at this point with Adrian Autry. My biggest hope for him is that he's his own coach. And I'll know right away if he's his own coach if they're playing man-to-man defense. I am sick and tired of the 2-3 zone. That's JV middle school crap. I want nothing to do with Syracuse basketball playing the 2-3 zone. It's time to play man-to-man. That's number one. And it comes down to his recruiting skills. Can he sell players on coming to play for Syracuse basketball? And is he a good X's and O's coach? I think no one knows the answer to that question at this point. We're going to find out. And you hope he starts the upward trend for Syracuse basketball, because he does have the advantage of being able to coach in the ACC, going up against Duke, North Carolina, Virginia. He's got opportunities to rebuild this program from, I don't want to say the ground up, because I don't want to say it's completely in the gutter right now, but
they did have one recruit for this upcoming college basketball season, which is not great. They just got him.
Exactly. They're not in a good spot right now. So Adrian Autry's got his work cut out for him. We'll see how he does, but it really comes down to how is he going to coach, in my opinion, in games with these young players. Yes, you need the talent, but sometimes the talent in college basketball doesn't always get the job done. John Calipari has some tough seasons with some great players. You got to be able to coach. Mick Cronin at UCLA, he's a phenomenal coach. It really comes down to, can you become a good X's and O's coach on top of being able to recruit? It remains to be seen what Adrian Autry is, but I'm excited about the future for Syracuse basketball.
And to make you more excited about the future, here's some programs where they did succeed after. UNC, after Dean Smith left, won the national championship 8 years later with Roy Williams. And Kentucky won a national championship 6 years after Adolph Rupp left the program. So some pretty good news there. And it has happened before, and we'll see. Well, like you said, it's a guessing game, and it is a major unknown going forward, but it has been done before. Now, Syracuse, hopefully they're trending upward, but one team that we know that is definitely trending upward, it seems like, is the New York Giants. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are back in blue. Who is the more irreplaceable player for the Giants, Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley?
That's a good question. I think at this point, you'd probably have to say Saquon Barkley, because currently Saquon Barkley was the Giants offense last season. Daniel Jones had a nice season, but he still only threw 15 touchdowns. I know he didn't have a ton of wide receivers to throw to, but the engine to that Giant offense was Saquon Barkley. So I think it was the right decision for them to franchise tag and bring him back on that $10 million tag. Hopefully see if they can work out a long-term extension with him, and hopefully he can be the catalyst for that offense. But you look at a guy like Daniel Jones, he got paid, and you got to give him credit. He's, I think, now the 7th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, which truly is wild stuff to me.
9 for 6. He has the same contract as Matt Stafford and Dak Prescott, which is just nuts. And that's Matt Stafford right around, I think it was the year that contract started the year after he won a Super Bowl with the Rams, which is just remarkable.
It's crazy. I always believe you're worth what someone's willing to pay you, but is Daniel Jones the 7th or 6th best quarterback in the NFL? The answer is clearly no, but he's got potential to improve. He's 25 years old. You hope the Giants continue to build the right team around him, bring in some wide receivers this offseason. Who knows, maybe a trade for a DeAndre Hopkins, see what the situation potentially could be in Cincinnati with T. Higgins. There is definitely room for growth for Daniel Jones. And look, he's got the right coaching staff around him in Brian Dable. he is a phenomenal head coach. He is a top 5 head coach in the NFL at this point. I'm confident in saying that. The turnaround that he put in place with that organization last year, just changing the culture, changing everything around the organization. So this is a scenario, in my opinion, where I do think Daniel Jones needed Brian Daboll a lot more than Brian Daboll needed Daniel Jones. I think it's a good marriage. We'll see how Joe Shane continues to build up this roster and see how the Giants can improve going into 2023.
For some reason, when you mentioned Brian Daboll, the Empire State Building just started to light up and was like pretty much a celebration of lights in the background. It was
like
the most bizarre thing. I don't know if it just because the clock turned 8:00, but that was really, really weird timing. And I'm also really disappointed that you said Saquon Barkley. If I was betting, and when I was thinking about that question going into the podcast, I thought for sure you'd say Daniel Jones because he's the quarterback and Saquon Barkley because he's a running back. I thought that was the case for sure.
You know what it is about Daniel Jones? He's good, but like how?
But he's not.
Exactly. He's solid. He had the best game of his career in the playoffs against the Vikings, which you always got to give credit to that. When you're able to perform on the biggest stage, you always deserve your props. But Daniel Jones also in each season has not thrown for more touchdowns than in games played. I mean, last year he played in 16 games. He throws 15 touchdowns. He's a solid quarterback. You can win with him. I'm not saying you cannot win with him, but he's just a decent, solid NFL quarterback. You got to continue to build up the roster, see how it goes. I don't think Giant fans are dancing in the streets, jumping for joy. They're like, oh my God, yes, we got Daniel Jones back. I think they're happy about it. See how he continues to grow.
Let me tell you some Daniel Jones stats that are a little concerning from just the last 3 seasons. Now, Jones is one of 17 quarterbacks to play 40 games over the last 3 seasons. Among those, passing yards per game, he is ranked 15th out of those 17 guys. Last in touchdowns, second to last in wins, and last in passer rating. Pretty alarming, but do you think that they should have maybe waited out, gone for Lamar Jackson?
Look, the whole Lamar Jackson thing is just so bizarre to me right now. It clearly seems like this is a case of collusion going on when you see so many teams that just...
Oh, Jared, stop with the conspiracy theories.
Come on. Teams are already coming out saying, oh, we're not interested. I mean, the fact that a team like the Atlanta Falcons is saying not interested in Lamar Jackson, I mean, that's the perfect team. It's an NFC team. The NFC South is not good at all. Why wouldn't the Falcons be interested in Lamar Jackson? It clearly comes down to me.
Because who is the Falcons quarterback?
He wants that fully guaranteed contract that Deshaun Watson got a year ago from the Cleveland Browns. And other NFL owners just don't want to give out that sort of crazy amount of guaranteed money. I really think that's what's going on with Lamar Jackson. But
you don't think it has anything to do with that he doesn't have a professional agent? He doesn't have Drew Rosenhaus. He doesn't have Leigh Steinberg. I don't know if Leigh Steinberg is still working with NFL players, but he doesn't have that top professional agent, and he's kind of got his family doing it for him.
I mean, I wouldn't say that.
Because that would make sense.
It doesn't help him, but I don't think it's killing his value. Look, he's ultimately a guy who he has had some injury concerns over the past few years. He also is a quarterback who relies heavily on his legs. But it really comes down to he wants that fully guaranteed contract. And teams, I just don't think, want to set the precedent for what was the Deshaun Watson contract. But going back to the Giants, look, it's such a dicey road if you say we're going to move on from Daniel Jones and go into the Lamar Jackson field, because you just don't know. You could come to an agreement with Lamar Jackson and say, we'll give up 2 first-round picks. But then the Baltimore Ravens could say, well, no, we're going to match it and we're going to keep him. That's the non-exclusive tag that Lamar Jackson has. So it's a dangerous game going into the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes, because Baltimore could just ultimately match any deal that another team comes to an agreement with him. But when it comes back to Daniel Jones, I don't want to compare him to Eli Manning, but
that is the correct comparison. They're the 2 best Giants quarterbacks that have played in the first 4 seasons of the career, because Sims was a late bloomer. Y.A. Tittle, I believe, came to the Giants. And of players that they got as rookies, it's Jones and Manning. Pretty good luck, but that's really the best comparison. The numbers are eerily similar.
Exactly. I was going to say, when you dissect Eli Manning's career, he's obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer in large part because he won 2 Super Bowls. There was nothing spectacular about his regular seasons year in, year out. He was good. He was okay, solid, but nothing to really write home about. He didn't have Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady like regular seasons in his career. And it was very encouraging when you saw Daniel Jones have the best game of his career in that playoff game. I throw out that Eagles performance because the Eagles were just light years ahead of the Giants roster. They were just superior in talent to the Giants. So you throw out that game, you get more talent around Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones can be a guy who can lead the Giants to a Super Bowl victory.
And I think one thing when it comes to comparing Jones to Barkley, one thing to mention is players don't dream of having Daniel Jones as their quarterback, but quarterbacks do dream of having Saquon Barkley as their running back.
Are you trying to segue into a with it or not with it segment? Is Saquon Barkley with it? Is that where you're going with this? Because Saquon Barkley.
No, I just want you to think about that. And I think that's a comparison. And if that doesn't make sense, let me know.
Yeah, I think Daniel Jones, there's nothing flashy about him. He's a solid quarterback. There's not a lot of personality to him. He's kind of he's boring. He can win. He's good. He's okay. There's nothing sexy about him. Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, you got every Jet sending out tweet after tweet after tweet, like, please, please, please come to the Jets. That is the splash. That is the sex appeal. Aaron Rodgers, when Tom Brady went from New England to Tampa Bay a few years ago. Daniel Jones is a solid quarterback. You can win with him, but you're right. Daniel Jones is not going to walk into a restaurant and be like, oh my God, Daniel Jones is in the house.
He's the quarterback of the Giants. Come on. You're still going to do that.
Of course, yes.
If you saw Daniel Jones walk into Prime 112 in Miami, you'd text me saying, oh my God, I just saw Daniel Jones walk into Prime 112 in Miami.
I would leave out the, oh my God. I would just say I saw Daniel Jones at a restaurant. But if Saquon Barkley walks into the restaurant, it would be like, oh my God, I saw Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's just got more star power to him, in my opinion, than Daniel Jones. Look, if Daniel Jones becomes more and more of a big time quarterback for the Giants, he's going to become a superstar, no doubt about it. But right now, he's a solid player. And there's nothing wrong about that with Daniel Jones. He's able to handle New York very well. And I think it was a good deal that the Giants got done with him to keep him in Big Blue for the foreseeable future.
Last year, in Barkley's first full season in quite some time, his 11 approximate value according to Pro Football Reference, among the top 9 running backs in the league, 4th in rushing yards per game, top 8 in rushing touchdowns, and 4th in rushing yards. Pretty good stuff for Saquon Barkley, and that's why he is definitely the more valuable player for the Giants. Now, here's something really off topic, but we're going to end the show with this. It's a spicy picante hot take topic. And this is from something that has to do with something that Jared has been doing. Jared has a habit of saying that he's getting into a sport or an activity after doing it just once. What defines getting into an activity? Because, for example, folks, he played pickleball once in Florida. I'm getting into pickleball. He has one tennis lesson in the city. I'm getting into tennis. What defines getting into something? For me, you have to do it for multiple weeks, and it has to be a routine for you to qualify as getting into it.
Getting into it, to me, defines if you do it one time and you make the commitment, I'm going to keep doing it. I think if you do it once and you make
what commitment did you make to pickleball? You played it once in Florida.
Oh, I'm gonna do it again. Oh, I'm.
But you're not doing it again. If it's a weekly thing, you sign up for a class, then that's getting into it. When I played softball once in Central Park, I was not getting into it. When I signed up to play softball in Central Park every Thursday, and I committed every Thursday to playing softball in Central Park, I was getting into softball. There's a difference in the words, Jared.
It's all about the weather, too. Once the weather is warmed up, that is when I will be playing tennis and pickleball once a week, or every other 10 days. That is when I will be fully
But
committed
you were
to
playing tennis indoors. So what does the weather matter with that?
well, pickleball. It's hard to find places to play indoors in the city. So once the weather starts warming up and you get out of the city a little bit more, you find courts outside of the city, that will define for me getting fully into it. So I am into pickleball and I am into tennis, and you're not going to waver my answer.
You're
so
into it, but you're not getting into it. You're into
I'm
playing the activities in the sports, but you're not getting into it. What's the over-under for the amount of times you play pickleball this summer in the Hamptons? What's the over-under? I am going at 2.
No, this summer I'm going to be playing pickleball. I will play at
Are you joining a league, or are you just counting on people to play pickleball with you? I will not play pickleball with you just to prove a point.
Well, then I'm going to have to play against a wall somewhere in the city, or I'm going to have to make new friends. I don't know what to tell you, Mark. I guess we got to say goodbye to doing activities together. I'll play pickleball with someone else. I'll play tennis with someone else. You don't want to play golf with me? I've been trying to get you to play golf for the past 15 years. You say no to it. So
15,
I guess
I haven't known you for 15 years.
I guess we can only do this podcast together. So you know what? I guess we got to do other athletic activities with some other people. So we'll see. But I will be playing a lot more pickleball over the summer, and I will be playing a lot more tennis over the summer on top of a ton of golf.
All right. So we're recording this. So we'll have this for quite some time, and it will be on YouTube forever. So I will hold you to that. One thing we are getting into is this podcast. We have been doing it weekly for Jarrett Least. I'm Mark Weber. We're not doing a podcast. That's it for everyone. And we'll see you next week, unless Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets or doesn't go to the Jets. Probably will constitute an emergency podcast for sure. See ya.